Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Governor's Office of Federal Assistance training. Today, we're going to go over programmatic management and implementation of your award. So welcome to today's training. Before we get started, I wanted to share a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording the training portion of today's meeting and we'll stop recording during the Q&A. The recording and presentation materials will be emailed to all registered attendees and posted to our website. If you have a question or comment, please use the hand raise function in the participant panel or type into the chat box. Closed captioning is available. Please click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. So about us. The Governor's Office of Federal Assistance, or also known as OFA, was created with the passage of Assembly Bill 445 of the 81st Legislative Session in 2021. OFA officially opened its doors on July 1st, 2022. Our vision as the Governor's Office of Federal Assistance is to support our stakeholders in obtaining, increasing, and maximizing federal assistance. Our mission is to reduce barriers by providing inclusive, collaborative, comprehensive, and centralized support in obtaining federal dollars for Nevada. All right, so meet your trainers. Our creators and presenters for today's training are both from the Office of Federal Assistance. You have myself, Akia Sanders, I'm the Senior Executive Grant Analyst. And you also have my colleague, Maida Sanchez, who's also Executive Grant Analyst. I'm going to go ahead and pass this along to Maida to get us started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our training here. I just wanted to talk about maximizing effective federal funding here in the state. So historically, the state of Nevada has faced challenges in securing optimal levels of federal funding compared to some of our other sister states. While the focus has often been on the actual dollar amounts received, there is a more strategic approach that must be taken to really shift our attention to what we can directly influence when trying to acquire more federal dollars. It is very important to strengthen our connections between our stakeholders and state agencies to really facilitate collaboration on federal initiatives. So to achieve this, we have to really invest in our state agencies and staff to enhance their ability to identify and manage federal awards effectively. And that is what we're trying to do here today with this training. So looking at maximizing effective federal funding, we really want to look at federal fund allocation and maximizing that impact to ensure efficient and effective management of our federal dollars that are coming into the state. And again, that is to support delivering those essential services to individuals within our communities. So looking at outcomes, we'll go ahead and get this back over to Akia.
Thank you, Maida. So today's anticipated learning outcomes are for you to gain a better understanding of post-award programmatic management processes for effective and compliant grant implementation, review of programmatic reporting, including requirements and expectations, cost allowability. We'll go over some best practices and closeout requirements. So you've secured the grant. Congratulations. Now what? This training session will dive deeper into the post-award process as it is a critical phase of the grant life cycle. Understanding best practices in post-award management is essential for navigating the implementation of your grant efficiently. Post-award management begins when a grantee accesses the awarded funds and begins the work towards achieving the grant's objectives. This phase involves overseeing the programmatic aspects of the grant, ensuring compliance with grant requirements, monitoring progress, and managing any changes or challenges that arise during implementation. By efficiently managing the post-award process, you can maximize the impact of your grant and successfully achieve your project's goals. Effective fiscal administration practices are crucial for programmatic success. Operating a successful grant-funded program requires thorough management of financial resources and strict adherence to the guidelines provided by the grantors. It is essential to allocate funds responsibly, ensuring that expenditures align with the intended purposes of the grant. We've provided some best practices for running an effective and compliant program. So number one, meet and exceed your targets. You should clearly define measurable objectives aligned with the grant's purpose and guidelines. Continuously assess progress towards targets and adjust strategies as necessary. Utilize performance metrics and benchmarks to ensure accountability and success. So number 2, provide quality services that have impact. Prioritize the delivery of services that meet the needs of target beneficiaries. Ensure services are delivered efficiently, effectively, and with integrity. Solicit feedback from stakeholders to improve service quality and responsiveness. Creative, innovative programs that adapt to changing needs. Stay informed about emerging trends and evolving community needs. Foster a culture of innovation within the organization to develop creative solutions. Adapt programs to address changing needs and maximize impact. Effective fund utilization. Develop a comprehensive budget that optimally allocates funds to achieve program goals. Implement strong financial management practices to track and monitor spending, and seek opportunities for cost-saving measures while maintaining program effectiveness. Maintaining appropriate programmatic and financial documentation. Maintain accurate and comprehensive programmatic and financial records. You should document all activities, expenditures, and outcomes in accordance with federal guidelines, and ensure documentation is organized, accessible, and up to date for reporting purposes. Reporting in a timely manner. Adhere to reporting deadlines outlined in the grant agreement or your notice of award. Prepare and submit reports accurately and on time, detailing program progress and outcomes, and provide clear and transparent information to demonstrate accountability to funders. Compliance with regulations. You should stay up to date with federal regulations, policies, and guidelines governing grant funding. Establish internal controls to ensure compliance with all legal and regulatory requirements, and conduct regular audits to identify and address any compliance issues promptly. And building credibility and functionality. Cultivate trust and credibility with federal agencies, stakeholders, and the community. Demonstrate transparency, integrity, and professionalism in all aspects of grant management, and continuously evaluate program performance and make necessary adjustments to enhance functionality and impact.
So looking at costs, we are talking about programmatic management in our post-award phase, but it's very important to be cognizant and thoughtful of the fiscal components as well, because fiscal informs programmatic and programmatic informs fiscal decisions. So factors in determining allowability include asking yourselves questions such as, is the cost reasonable and necessary for a program? Is the expense in compliance with laws, regulations, and grant terms? And to what extent is that expense allocable to the grant? Is the cost adequately documented? And is the cost consistent with grantee rules that apply to both federally funded and non-federally funded activities? Remember, a cost is reasonable if, in its nature and amount, it does not exceed that which would be incurred by a prudent person under the circumstances prevailing at that time. So if the cost is considered prudent or by another person in a similar situation, it would be considered reasonable. Other questions that you can ask yourself to ask whether or not a cost is reasonable is it ordinary and is it necessary? Do sound business practices support that expenditure? Are the costs comparable to market prices for comparable goods or services in that specific area? And have all concerned acted with prudence? Again, considering the responsibilities to the organization, community, and others. What is that perception? And what about allocability? Allocable means that a good or a service can be assigned to an award or cost objective in accordance with the relative benefit achieved. So that cost has to be charged in proportion to the benefits received, and costs incurred for joint or common objectives are included in that F&A, that facilities and administration, and they cannot be charged to the project. So keeping this in mind and having an understanding of your financial accounting standards and your generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, is very important as you move through the programmatic pieces, so that that connection remains consistent. So always have an open line of communication with your fiscal team. So tips for ensuring compliance. Again, keeping in mind those fiscal pieces, moving into the programmatic management. So as the program or project manager for your grant, it's really important, again, to have that firm understanding of the fiscal components of your grant, because it's going to help you navigate through your project to stay in compliance. At the end of the day, You don't only want to just spend down your federal award, but you want to spend it down well and really create that impact that was promised in your proposal. So listed on this slide are some tips to really help you ensure that you do remain in compliance, including knowing your agreement. Make sure you read. You have to read everything. Read that Notice of Grant Award or NOGA and become familiar with it. Print it out, write on it, break it apart into a work plan, and understand what you're required to do. If you have any questions, if you're not sure about something, reach out and ask for help. It's never a bad thing to ask questions, to ask for clarification. Maybe something just doesn't make sense, or maybe you've done it a certain way in the past, and maybe that doesn't apply this time, and it's better to ask than to ask for forgiveness afterwards. Remember, always keep your agreement documentation up to date. You should have the most current version of your Notice of Grant Award. If there's any type of amendment or change to the scope of work or the budget or to anything really, that new version should be kept with the original Notice of Grant Award so you can keep track of those changes. Remember, stay flexible within your framework and your work plan, but understand implementation limitations. Again, know your agreement, read that award, and understand where you can make changes to your work plan, but within the allowed scope of your agreement. Always monitor your subrecipients. Make sure they have the knowledge and information and any clarity that they require to carry out their program pieces. And if you're acting as that pass-through entity, that you are available to provide them, your subrecipients, with any technical assistance as they request or as you come to identifying any findings or conversations with them. Your subrecipient at the end of the day is your partner in the work, and their success is your success. Do not lose sight of the end game, which is to spend down your award and to deliver amazing results. You really want to be able to speak to your work, right? In other federal applications and develop a positive reputation and relationship with your grantor. So implementation. Oh, we have a polling question. Skip. Implementation. So keeping these tips in the back of your mind, it's really helpful as you begin the actual implementation phase. You've convened your team. It's time to execute. So the model you use to implement your program should take into consideration your resources, your activities, and the intended outcome as you move forward, as we see here visually displayed. Your activities are really those day-to-day tasks that you and your team are doing to keep your project moving forward and with very little conflict. Every organization will have a different method of doing their work, but you should, at a minimum, understand the required activities that must be conducted. What are you doing directly or through subrecipients or contractors? Are there specific activities that are happening in certain areas? What do we have to monitor to ensure success, or what do we have to monitor? Are there soft touch points or pain points that need to be addressed? Some best practices or advice: you can hold monthly calls with your subrecipients in a certain region, perhaps, and just check in on them frequently and identify wins or identify challenges or identify maybe concerns that they might have, and figure out where there might be room to provide any technical assistance or to intervene if they need to be refocused or if there needs to be a change made to their award. Are they spending down in a timely fashion? Are they having a hard time maybe filling a key role position that's bringing them behind? So be aware of their activities, be available to answer questions, identify hiccups quickly, and really be able to pivot as needed in providing that technical assistance in the implementation of your work. Understanding your resources, again, what is it going to take to make things happen, and how are you going to hit those outcomes and really see those results and hit those expected targets? This ties again back into your budget, having a knowledge of your budget. If there's a change or perhaps there's a way to manage your activity at less of a cost to you to reach more people, this is something that can happen. In its entirety, your model and how you conduct your work is a continuous and whole cycle that cannot function well without all of these moving pieces. So looking at work plans, before you move into work planning, monitoring, and evaluation, it's really important to ask yourself a few questions. Are we doing all of the work directly? Who's doing what? What is being done through subrecipients? What does it take to make this happen? And what are those outcomes? What are they supposed to look like? We're not going to dig too much into subrecipients today, as we will have a training in June to address that subrecipient relationship and do a deep dive. But I do want to touch on understanding risk and how to set yourself up for success as you identify who is doing what to support the overall program and actual work as you put together your work plan activities. So risk really identifies what your monitoring schedule is going to look like, how often you should be monitoring, giving the past performance of your subrecipient. Monitoring always involves tracking your project's progress, even when those pieces are not being done directly. So understanding risk, again, we'll be digging into this in May. So please join us for risk management. But discussing risk and the importance of why a risk assessment must be done and when it needs to be done prior to any type of issuing of a subaward agreement, it really impacts, again, your monitoring schedule and has to be maintained throughout the life of the federal award. Don't forget to always check the debarment list prior to issuing an award. It's important to make sure that you don't issue federal funds when someone is on that suspension or debarment list. So again, when looking at monitoring your progress and your partner's progress towards goals, and if you're reaching those goals, this risk, these activities that are being implemented and being done, so in accordance with the award agreement and plan, having an evaluation method so that you're able to shift or adjust needs as needed is very effective and impactful in program implementation. So are we really doing what we said we do? And are we doing it well? And are the activities really being completed? So through monitoring, again, you can gather this information, walk it back to your budget, make sure that things are being spent down in a timely manner, and really ensure that everyone is in compliance. And again, if there are any questions, that those questions are being identified and asked, and that there's an opportunity to provide technical assistance before things get out of hand. So subawarding, quickly, just some highlights on subawarding. Again, we'll be talking about this in June. This slide is very helpful because it does provide you with an overarching view of what that pass-through flow looks like. So many state agencies in Nevada do function as a pass-through entity or a prime recipient, then passing through or distributing awards to other non-federal entities that are identified as subrecipients for implementation of programmatic pieces of that federal award. So the agency must or may distribute the funds to subrecipients either through a competitive process or a non-competitive process for implementation. And again, an agency, a state agency, or a non-federal entity acting as a pass-through doesn't always have to award pass-through dollars on a competitive basis. Remember, your PTE, pass-through entity, always has significant responsibilities in determining what a relationship looks like and what responsibilities they hold to the federal grantor must be passed down to a subgrantee. And they have to establish a document and document a subaward relationship through your notice of award and ensure that all subrecipients are in compliance with all federal and state grant requirements. Looking at relationships. So we do have a guide, Success as a Pass-Through Entity, that will be provided to everyone and is available on our website as a guide to learn about what a pass-through relationship can look like and what an effective pass-through relationship should look like. The biggest thing that we do see is identifying a contractor or versus a subrecipient. And what is the difference and how do I establish this type of relationship? Which one's which, right? So the challenge is to really evaluate the substance of the relationship to determine if that relationship, again, is that of a subrecipient or a contractor. And you have to keep in mind that sometimes what a vendor does can overlap. And we have to use our best judgment in making the decision as to whether or not that vendor is acting as a subrecipient or as a contractor. Keep in mind always, you don't want to make a decision based on your capacity. You do not want to decide to use a vendor as a contractor because you don't have capacity to monitor subrecipients. So really understand that relationship, your responsibility as a pass-through entity, and how programmatically your partner is supporting the work of that grant. Some throwbacks, some callbacks to previous presentations. If you have not had an opportunity to watch our State of the State or funding state processes, please visit our website and take a look at a couple of those slides talking about contractor versus subrecipient. It's important to kind of see the dates that the state needs to adhere to when moving contracts or awards through the state. And so becoming familiar with the Board of Examiners. The Board of Examiners is established by Nevada Revised Statute, and their purpose is to review claims for payment pursuant to an appropriation or authorization by the legislature. And so their members are listed here. Their members include our governor, our secretary of state, our attorney general, and our budget director from GFO, or a clerk. And so their meeting dates are here. So kind of helps us set up our timelines as we move through these different establishing these relationships as we go through this programmatic pieces. So again, if you've decided that maybe your relationship isn't a subaward through a subrecipient and it is through a contractor, and you are a state agency, you would want to reach out to our purchasing division to go through that procurement policy. Here's some links to those regulations where you can learn about what the requirement is and what those minimum requirements are for things to be reviewed. And again, please reference our past presentation for more information on that. So implementation again, and our work plans. So creating and sharing your work plan with internal staff is helpful in really setting your team up for success. Again, implementation is the bulk of the work that we're doing, the actual work once you receive that award. So understand and share out the work plan. Draft your work plan and include details as to the outline of your plan and what the first year is going to look like. Base it on the program description and that proposal that you submitted to the grantor and use it to drive your project management to identify activities and organize those day-to-day tasks that need to be completed in order to move the project forward. Your plan should provide details and specifics. You should include room for adjustment. You should have a little bit of wiggle room in there so that you're meeting your targets and as always are looking for different ways that your organization can move through your project and on to the next steps. And again, identify whether or not you may need to pivot. So remember to communicate at all points. It's very important that your plan is easily understood so that someone who's unfamiliar with the project can really pick it up, understand it, and work off of it. So make sure it's cohesive. What you've written in your work plan is tied back to the data collection pieces and to your budget. For example, if you're saying that you're going to serve X amount of participants, let's say 35, and 40% of those are going to represent an underserved community, is there a process to monitor and evaluate this activity to ensure that you've done this and at what cost and which you've identified within your approved budget? And then again, you can demonstrate that through reporting your activities, the time frame, and the budget should all be realistic and easy to understand and reportable. So here we have just some examples of work plans. Every organization, again, is going to have a different style. Maybe you have an established template already, but the idea is to have that agreement with that program description. If it's multiple years, identifying what are those different objectives and strategies throughout the years, and what are those outputs at certain points, and what are those targets that you're trying to hit, as well, again, as an indicator of success. What does it look like when we actually do something right, and how are we measuring and reporting that? So this brings us again to monitoring not only externally for your subrecipients, but internally to evaluate progress, right? It's important to see if you are doing what you said you would do. The information you collect from this process can inform your annual budgeting and future work planning. It's going to help you provide that information for your reporting to your grantor and that final closeout of your report, or the final closeout report, excuse me, and can act as an information tool for data-informed decision making within your organization. So have definitions for measuring targets. Use your program objectives to define indicators Are there required indicators that inform the data that must be collected and analyzed? What other information can you collect to measure the impact of your program activities? Again, you want to create that alignment and track your project's progress and analyze the effectiveness of each of those activities. Again, precise definitions, track your project's progress, evaluate at each of those points, and walk it back to your agreed on award or plan. Understand those objectives. Identify how you will track activities. Have a timeline. Know some of those key dates just in case you do get off track. Have an appropriate data collection method. Streamline and automate when you can. Be open to make changes if needed. And make sure your staff, most importantly, know what data is being collected, why data is being collected, and how to appropriately collect and report that data. And then always share back that data analysis information to your communities and ask for feedback. Encourage that accountability and transparency with your communities that you're serving. So keep in mind that just knowing your program is going to help inform how to go about monitoring and evaluating progress and collecting that data or information that's needed. Take an implementation friendly approach. So understand what your partners are actually doing out in the field. Are they experiencing any challenges traveling to a work site? Are there any barriers with volunteers or staff out in the community that maybe are not familiar with having an app or a tablet or something, and maybe they would appreciate having a paper reporting system versus maybe through an online portal? Or do they have access to Wi-Fi or internet? So what can you do as that program manager to really implement practices to help ease some of that burden of those challenges that may or may not be experienced out in the field, like nurses who might be providing fluoride treatment to students out in our communities and our rural communities, are parents unable to provide any required information that's being reported or collected for reporting because of literacy issues. So how can we address this beforehand to ensure that programs are acting smoothly within our community and being implemented, and that we're receiving that data that we need for reporting?
Thank you, Maida. So to continue to talk about reporting, reporting is the primary way you demonstrate that you're meeting the expectations of your award and complying with grantor's requirements. Timely and accurate reporting contributes to building a strong relationship with the grantor and providing evidence of the impact of your program. While the majority of award recipients carry out grants ethically and efficiently, these monitoring procedures are necessary to maintain transparency and to prevent fraud and abuse of the federal grant dollars. Here are 5 tips for effective reporting. Do not be afraid to tell the truth. It is exciting to report on your program successes, but sometimes you have to report some bad outcomes. This is common and should not be avoided. Please do not hide the challenges you may be facing. Program managers who demonstrate they can overcome unforeseen challenges make positive impressions on their grantors. Develop a reporting calendar and timeline. List all the requirements on a calendar and plan ahead so you'll not be rushed. Make sure all staff and subrecipients who contribute to each report are aware of the timeline and due dates for reports. Engage subrecipients early. Most reports require prime recipients to gather information from their subs. When creating your reporting calendar, allow enough time for your subrecipients to meet those requirements. This ensures accountability within the relationship between the prime and their subrecipient, holding them responsible for data collection and meeting deadlines. Make sure you tell a consistent story in all of your reports. There's a negative disconnect if your performance reports describe a financially healthy program, but your federal financial reports show you're going through your funding more quickly than expected. All reports should be interconnected and accurately depict the implementation of your program. Ensure that all conclusions can be backed up with data, demonstrating how your program is achieving targets and staying within the budget. This ensures an accurate assessment of your program's status. And do not surprise your grant management officer. Reports document various aspects of your program. However, they are not the primary means of communicating to your funding agency. You should reach out and discuss major challenges with budget, staff partnerships, or implementation strategies with your assigned grant officer first, and ensure you're documenting them in your reports as well. Timing of reporting. Specific reporting requirements, schedules, and systems can vary for each grant, so please ensure you thoroughly review the grant's terms and conditions carefully for this information. Your notice of grant award will be the document that provides those terms and conditions for you. It will also serve as a document that guides when to submit reports, what format or system to submit the reports in, and how and who to submit the reports to. It would also give due dates and deadlines for reporting requirements. Knowing when to pivot. If you've been monitoring your work and the work of subrecipients and contractors, you can see that funds are maybe not being expended as originally planned or will not be expended in time or by the end of that period of performance. Anticipate these needs early to submit proper requests to your grantor asking for an amendment. Maybe a contract was canceled, or maybe targets are not being hit and a scope of work amendment needs to be submitted. Or maybe you just need a little bit more time to get funds out and require no cost extension. Here are a few types of requests grantees can request in these instances. An amendment. Amendments are typically requested to make changes to the terms, conditions, scope of grant agreement after it has been awarded. Project change requests. This is a formal proposal submitted by the grantee to modify specific aspects for the project. Budget revisions. This request includes making changes to the budget originally proposed in the grant application. A no-cost extension. This request allows a grantee to extend the period of performance of the grant without providing additional funds. Technical assistance. This request refers to support provided to grant recipients from their granting agency to enhance their capacity to successfully implement their projects. We also, as OFA, provide technical assistance if you didn't know. Remember, the grantor wants you to succeed. Work with them, communicate, and request that technical assistance when available to really execute well on your work. Closeout procedures. Non-federal entities must submit a final financial performance and other reports required under the awarded grant and meet the award conditions of their grant within 120 days after the grant award expires or is terminated. Preparation for closeout should start 3 months prior to the end date of your award. Purpose of closeout is to ensure final reports are submitted in a timely manner for review and evaluation. Allowable costs are determined, final amounts due are identified, and payment arrangements have been made, or any real or tangible personal property is accounted for. In those final reports, when wrapping up a grant, there are specific reports you'll need to submit. Here are 3 common ones required in this phase of your grant. Post-award reporting. Oh, there's a link that'll take you to those reports, but the final federal financial report, or your SF-425, is submitted via your PMS, but always check your notice of grant award for that, and verify that your report is accurate before hitting that submit button. Your final progress report. There's no template. Make sure you're checking your notice of grant award for guidance on that report, and should cover entire project period at a minimum, include an overview of the goals and objectives in your grant application that were accomplished during the funding period. And then that tangible personal property report, or SF-428B, completed by recipients to account for tangible personal property, acknowledge equipment acquired under the award if it will be retained for use as originally approved, or request the federal agency for disposition instruction if no longer needed for original purpose. If you do not acquire personal property, still submit your report and indicate that no property was acquired. How can you support OFA? Thank you. That concludes our training. And as we transition, how we're going to go over a few ways how you can support OFA and some of the resources we provide. OFA offers a variety of grant-related resources for our stakeholders. These include notice of funding opportunity, allows organizations and agencies across the state to share details about funding opportunities at that link. We also have a USDR tool, which is our federal grant discovery tool, and it's our funding database. It serves as a comprehensive resource for stakeholders. We also have the grant manual, and we provide a comprehensive manual to guide stakeholders through the grant process. We provide free monthly training, such as this one. And as I said in the previous slide, we also have technical assistance. If you ever need technical assistance or you have questions that need to be answered, you can send us an email at grants@ofa.nv.gov. Our next training session is risk management in the post-award phase, mitigating risk strategies for audit finding prevention protocols. This will be hosted on May 22nd at 10 a.m. Additionally, we provide several additional resources on our website and a monthly newsletter to keep you informed about funding opportunities, upcoming training sessions, and monthly tips and tricks. Thank you so much for attending today's training. Please take some time to complete our survey. We really do appreciate the feedback of our stakeholders. These surveys inform the work we do and the topics we present on when we provide our free training webinars.